This is the Tab Podcast with John Vermilya and me, Britton Bishop. What's up, John?
What's up, Britton?
It's a big day.
It's a big day.
It is.
Yeah.
We're here.
I had to actually put on pants for this podcast.
We made it, though. I don't know. I'm excited. I wish people, the version of the podcast they're seeing now,
It's so much more polished, man.
Like the humble beginnings of the wood table that I found underneath the stairs. The staff was doing a budget meeting earlier, and I walked out there and I said, "Hey, just so you guys know, if anything in this pile looks like it came from your office, I probably stole it whenever we started the podcast, so you guys can have your lamps back."
It's been requisitioned by division. Yeah.
But we're here.
Why is it a big day?
Podcast episode 1. So this will be episode 45 of the Tabernacle podcast. This will be our first day that we actually have a setup where it'll be available on YouTube. So excited about that. Pretty cool stuff.
We've got, is he an executive producer? Is he the engineer?
The one and only.
The one and only. Oh, Lord Matthew Corey Hughes?
Yes.
You can't see him. He's right over here off camera. And we have cameras. What is that about?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess somebody decided
do
to be a good idea.
Do you ever watch a podcast that has cameras? I think I have maybe twice.
I watch them on YouTube. That's kind of like my generation's thing is watching podcasts. So
see, I'm the podcast in the car guy.
Yeah.
So if I'm watching it, that's unsafe for everyone.
See, but I'm going to admit this. I'm sorry, Mom. I still watch them in the car. I don't use Spotify to do podcasts. All my podcasts are on YouTube. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So I figured that'd be a cool platform for us to launch into.
What if Hope finds out?
That's the question.
That's the question.
Everything
changes June 4th, buddy.
I know. There's so many rules.
Your life is no longer your own.
Best day ever. So
Britton Bishop's getting married on June 4th.
Yeah, he is.
Are you registered? Do people need to know?
Yeah, Target, Crate and Barrel.
Yeah.
Cash. No, I'm just kidding.
Which, by the way, Britton didn't ask me to say this, but don't be sad if you're not invited. They're having like a members-only jacket wedding.
Members only.
Really small and tight because that's what they want.
Exactly.
But you can still send gifts. You're registered.
Hey, you're a part of the Tabernacle family.
Family, let's pound them with the gifts. Let's do this.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, we're jumping back in. We kind of took a break from our Luke section of the podcast. We just kind of jumped in. We had some awesome guests. Foster and Laura Christie came. Chris Emery was here. And kind of started a sub-series, the DNA series, that we're going to jump back into again here soon. But I felt like we kind of talked, and we kind of have missed a chunk of Luke podcast-wise. We've been continuing in our Son of God series at the church. But kind of there's been some sections along the way in Luke, chapters kind of 8 through 10, that if people have been following along with the reading plan, they would have seen. But we've skipped the stone now across some of these. We've got Jesus. They asked the question, why do you use parables? There's Jesus commissions the 12. There's the moment where he feeds the 5,000. Peter confesses Jesus as the Christ. Jesus kind of lays it out for them and does a cost of discipleship. He sends the 72, and the 72 return. We see the story of the Good Samaritan, and then also the Martha and Mary situation. So that has all been packed into those kind of 3, 8, 9, 10, those chapters that we find there. And we've also been preaching preaching on the faith of the centurion. We had an awesome week last week talking about the transfiguration. So it's been a really, really cool series, but just kind of felt like, man, out of all those those are some big moments in the book of Luke.
And we've skipped so much.
Right.
And I think on the weekends we've been letting people know it's not that these parts are unimportant.
Right.
It's that we specifically wanted to do the Son of God series in a different way, which was we wanted to hit some of the highlights. And they're not even necessarily the highlights. Mm-hmm. Like if you were to talk to a scholar, they might go, oh, the ones they're preaching through aren't even the highlights.
Right.
See, part of I'm talking to the audience now. Yeah. You and I know this, is that when you're preaching, it isn't always just the text. It's what does this people, this group, this audience, through the leadership of the Holy Spirit, what is it that they need to hear? Mm-hmm. And so it isn't just we're preaching the best parts, because some of the best parts were not, but some of the best parts might be so familiar that we're feeling, all right, for this season, February 2022, our congregation needs to hear this.
Right.
And so by doing that, there's a lot of stuff. Like one of the most painful parts, and you didn't even mention this one, is in Luke chapter 8, Jesus commands nature. He calms a storm.
Yeah, he's sleeping in the boat. Yep, I did miss that one.
And I've always thought, and for those of you that don't know, it's in Luke chapter 8. It starts in verse 22. They're going across the lake. Jesus takes a nap.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the nap, a huge storm comes up, and the disciples think they're going to die. And they're seasoned sailors. I mean, these guys know how to handle a boat in a storm, and they think they're going to die.
Right.
And then they wake them up, and one of my favorite moments in all of Jesus' earthly life is he gives the old peace be still.
Yeah.
You know, like he rebukes the wind and the waves. Then he looks at his disciples and is like, what's the matter with you? And then he goes back to sleep, I guess.
Love it.
And you would think at that point, like, men would know, okay, this is God.
Yeah.
Like you would think, and that's the reason I bring that up. If you witnessed that, Britton Bishop.
Right.
You witnessed a man wake up, command wind and waves to stop. It becomes a flat calm, and you're just kind of cruising over. And then he goes back to sleep.
Could have used that my first day on Lake Michigan salmon fishing. Matt Stevens could have calmed the waves. It would have been nice. I mean, we're talking 7-footers. I don't even know what that means, but it means something.
That means big waves,
and I was green, hanging over the side of this thing, and Matt's over there. Well, we got one, and I'm like, somebody else can reel it in. I'm just dying over there. So,
did you ever really throw up?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
oh yeah. And we slept on the boat, so it was even worse. You just feel like you're constantly just moving the whole time. So Lake Michigan, I'm just gonna say it, hot take, sucks. So I'll stick to the Manistee River.
But so if someone, if Matt Stevens stood up there and just said, peace be still, you'd be like, all right, I'm going to put my faith. I mean, your faith was in him already,
right,
but not as your faith in God.
Right.
Like to the disciples, why would they ever doubt this guy? Having seen that? And yet they do.
Yeah, it's crazy because then you look at even coming out of that moment, another one that I skipped is then they go and this dude is in the cemetery, right?
Oh, the demon-possessed guy.
Yeah, the demon-possessed guy. I think that's right after that, isn't it?
Yes, that's in. Yeah, and he starts in verse 26.
The creation of bacon, because all the pigs die jumping off the cliff. You know there was somebody down there just waiting. But there's those moments along the way, and you see, and it's like, man. And then we know the story, so it's like, man, Peter, really?
Yeah.
But then I think back to my own life, and there's so many moments where Jesus has shown up and showed off in my life, whether it be providing for me, opening a door, coming to the Tabernacle, whatever that looks like, right? These moments where it's clearly Jesus is the only reason any of this would have happened.
Right.
I think a perfect picture of that is when I came to the Tab, right? I'm in Sri Lanka. You and I haven't talked in months, close to years.
Close to a year.
And it's like text message, all this happens. And then I get here, COVID happens. And things got hard, and I'm like, man, was this actually Jesus that did this, or was it our own ideas? And it's like,
you mean when doubt starts to
doubts
creep
in those
in.
moments,
yeah.
and I start to doubt, okay, but did Jesus really? And it's like, yeah, there's no way all of this unfolds the way it does without Jesus being a part of it. So, I think it's really easy for us to look at the moment in the boat or in that and see those glimpses of Jesus. But I would encourage people to ask the question, where has that happened in your life, where you know that Jesus is real, you've given your life to him, whatever that looks like. And then those doubts start to creep in. I think it's really cool. Something you talked about actually last weekend was, I think that's where mountaintops become important because you can remember those moments, right? I think when David talks about restore to me the joy of my salvation, there's those little moments on the way where you just kind of get that subtle check reminder, hey, I'm still in charge. The waves even obey.
And as we've said, you've said it, I've said it, you can navigate by those mountains. But those mountains which we chase after, and that was a mountaintop experience, metaphorically speaking, when the disciples saw the storm calmed, when they saw a demon cast out of a dude, a legion of demons, and then into the pigs, and then you see these demon pigs.
Yeah.
Darcy hates when I make that noise, but the pigs go over.
Right.
You would think that you would see those and never, ever, ever doubt again.
Right.
But you do. And, two people that you and I love to quote, Tim and Heidi Burgess, and I don't know even who to give the credit for. It was probably Heidi that said it, but Tim repeated it, and I remember it, is we have built-in forgetters. We've got these built-in forgetters, which is one of the reasons why I think God gave us his word, and which is one of the reasons probably God wired us to worship every weekend. People are like, hey, why do I go to church every weekend? Because you have got a built-in forgetter. You'll forget by Monday.
Right. Some people don't make it out the door.
Some people don't make it out the door. And they're, they see you or I or one of the other guys at the door and they're like, hey, good speech.
Yeah. Pasture.
Yeah, pasture. By the way, it's a pastor, not a pasture. Just call me John,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But hey, what did you like about it? I don't know. That funny joke you said, and it's like
when you talked about Jesus.
Yeah, the Lord. Amen. And it's like you didn't hear a thing. But
no, for
I don't
sure.
know why I'm feeling that way.
And then it continues, and I think the cool moment in chapter 9 where he commissions the 12. So the disciples, he has this moment where he gives them power and authority, is what the text says, over all demons and to heal diseases. And I can't imagine what that moment was like, right? You just got done watching him calm the sea. You just got done watching the legion of demons.
And you just got watch him at the end of 8, raising a girl from the dead.
Yep.
Raising, and then saying, don't tell anybody. Why did he do that? Don't tell anybody. Because if I have got that power, I'm telling everybody, right? Yeah. But he told, was it Jairus or however you say his name? He raised her from the dead, and then he's gonna, which is cool. And which, by the way, if you've wondered why, I heard a pastor one time preaching that passage, and he said the coolest thing that made me want to be a better pastor and think about passages more deeply. Before he deputizes the 12, which were so immature, just like me, he raises this girl from the dead, and then he tells his parents, don't tell anyone. And this pastor's observation was, he was thinking about her prom. And I went, what? They have Jewish prom? I mean, back. Yeah. But his point was, what girl or what boy wants to dance with the zombie girl?
Right.
And so the whole thing was and I was like, oh, what a great insight. I need to be a better preacher. Right. That's a great insight. Yeah. Now, we don't know if that was his motivation or not. Right. But we see, the reason I break that up is Jesus wields that authority in such a humble way. And he's got them on this timeline of he's not ready for all the paparazzi to be around him.
Right.
But I think when we get to 9 and he sends out the 12, it says in 9 chapter 1, he called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. And then he gives them these other instructions, which is, take nothing for your journey, not a staff, nor a bag, nor bread, nor money, and don't take extra clothes. Whatever house you enter, stay there, and from there depart. And wherever they do not receive you, when you leave, shake the dust off your feet, and so forth and so on. And so there's like this emphasis on, here's your authority, here's the power, hurry up and go.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be encumbered. Just go do this. And so if you think about it, 12, he sends them out 2 by 2. That's 6 teams of 2 going out in these directions. And it was really like their first missions trip. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what Jesus did during that time. Maybe he took a break from, the intensity of Peter, James, and John.
Oh, I think about like that moment of seeing all that stuff happen, being in the boat for the wave, seeing the pigs, the little girl, all this stuff, right? And then I identify myself with Peter very often.
I think we all do.
And I'm like, man, what would I have felt like if Jesus would have said the words, power and authority over all demons, and I was like, man, this would have got crazy. Because it would have instantly became about me.
Yeah.
And so
I heal you.
Yeah, right. I'm doing all of it. Yeah, I mean,
you have a demon? Yeah, be gone.
Exactly. And so
with this badge that I just got.
Why do you think the emphasis, and this is just a question, I don't know, but why do you think the emphasis when he gives them take nothing? There's nothing, don't even take extra clothes. Do you think, I have my own thoughts, but I'm curious, why would you think that he would say, hey, don't even pack, just go?
From just a knee jerk, we didn't plan this. I'm thinking he's teaching them dependency. There's some sort of dependency because there's going to be other times, namely after his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension, where he's not going to be there.
Right.
And they're going to have to be even more dependent. So this is almost like a trial run.
Yeah.
And being in ministry, as you and I know, you got to humble yourself, not just to be in ministry, but to actually depend on God. Yeah. Because no one gets it. Well, no legitimate minister gets into ministry for the money.
Right.
There's illegitimate ministers that are making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But learning to be dependent on God and on the Jesus in other people, the Spirit in other people.
Yeah.
So maybe that was one reason. There was another thing that I read in regards to that passage. He may have also been trying to teach them about urgency and about travel light. Don't get attached. Don't worry about your comforts. There's an urgency to this message,
and so it's the most important thing.
Boom.
Yeah, that's good, because I think about even like the trips that I've been on, like overseas, different places. I've been on some of the ones where you go with all the college kids, right? And there's like, we took 11 suitcases for one person, right?
Goodness. Yeah.
And then I've been on the trips where it's literally like we're packing in one backpack because we got to roll. And those are the trips where it's like, man, like this is. I imagine the guy that was on the podcast, Charlie Marquis. He's a dude that's trained me missions wise in a really cool way, and that's kind of he operated in that way of like, we're going with urgency, we're taking bare necessities, and we're going to trust that God's going to provide people along the way to provide for us different needs that we may have. So no, we don't need to pack every meal we've ever wanted for this trip because there's gonna. But I think that I like what you're saying. I think the dependency piece is key too. There's this picture of. And obviously Jesus discipled the disciples. That's why it was their name. But I think it's a practical picture of not just come and see and follow me around, but he's equipping them to go do ministry, and he's showing them like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. I think that's a really cool picture that happens there.
And just as a way of a public service announcement, if you are part of the Tabernacle family and you get to go on a mission trip, I'm going to put this challenge forth to you. Try to be the man or woman student that packs the least.
Yeah.
Just be that hardcore.
Oh, dude, I got kids that go to retreats that don't change clothes, so they would kill it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, definitely pack a little deodorant, but you don't need to, what are you there for, a fashion show?
My first ever church camp I went to in second grade, I left in an outfit, and I came back in the same outfit. My mom was like, did you change? I was like, for what? You weren't there to tell me to. I wore the same clothes for 4 days.
Bishop.
And it was outside.
Oh, you must have been
Oklahoma.
rank. You must have been rank.
But I was cute, so nobody said anything.
You were cute. So there's one other thing that is and you made me think about it because you're talking about how Jesus is training these disciples. Which, by the way, podcast listeners, I feel really short at this awesome table that Ben Brown built. Right, so I can't see my Bible between the height of the mic and the.
You got to put it on the front.
Yeah, just kind of put it on the front. Well, then I can't get to the mic.
Because you got that big old man ESV Bible.
This is a man ESV Bible.
I know a guy that preaches from one like that, but he's smaller than Martin Rizzi, and so it just looks weird up there.
He's compensating for height or something.
Could get an iPad, John.
Yeah,
what do you think?
No, leather and paper, bro. I'm all about.
This is leather?
I'm all about a tree pressed between two cows, but you'll get that later. There's one other thing that he preps them for, and we're never going to make it through this.
Right.
Yeah, Matt, I hope you didn't have anything else planned today because you're just going to be sitting in that corner for a minute. Lord Matthew Corey Hughes. Ask Victoria why he's Lord Matthew Corey Hughes. This little thing, he says, wherever they do not receive you, when you leave that town, shake off the dust from your feet as a testimony against them. He's also preparing them for not everyone is going to receive you. You're going to receive opposition. Not everyone's interested in the gospel. Not everyone is interested in the life change that comes from the love of God and the love of Christ and the kingdom of God in their hearts. They're just not interested.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget that that's part of the training is that ministry. I mean, if Foster was here, which maybe that should have been the first vodcast because Foster's a fine-looking man. Oh, yeah. That's a fine-looking couple that were sitting in these chairs. Foster would say, ministry's hard. It's hard, John. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. It'll whoop you if you're not focused on the right things. Just this past weekend, I had, well, I want to be careful, but, someone who apologized to me for something. But it really wasn't an apology. It was a backhanded, this is how you failed me, John. Right. But don't worry, I've forgiven you.
Yeah.
And, it's like.
Those are fun ones.
Yeah, thanks for that. But, and that's not even as hard as what these guys faced. Opposition, persecution, stones, all that kind of stuff. But he prepped them. He's like, ministry's going to be hard. Shake the dust off your feet. Keep going. And stay focused.
Yeah, because I think, too, because Paul and Barnabas in Acts 13, you see that kind of same usage. And I don't know that off the top of my head. I have a study Bible. But
that was impressive. I was like, dang.
But there's that same usage of that shaking the dust off your feet. And I think that it gives a picture to like living on mission and staying on mission. And how many people get discouraged because they've gone to the Tabernacle and they've bought into the mission of being a domino, but they get discouraged when it doesn't work the first time. And I think I was reading a study the other day, the average person, it takes 7 invites for them to come to church. But how many people have stopped inviting people completely because they were the 6th invite and they heard no?
Huh.
And they're like, oh man, I must have heard the spirit wrong or whatever. I've told the story about the guy that was jogging and all the stuff, shares the gospel with his neighbor. Neighbor's like, no, I'm good. And then years later, it's the neighbor's the guy that prayed for him to get the job at the church, all this stuff. But I think that there's so many people that get so discouraged because it didn't go the way they wanted it to go once. And I think that's what Jesus is
that's a great point.
Right here. He said, shake the dust off because there's more people.
Keep moving.
Yeah, keep moving. Yeah.
Keep moving. No, that's an excellent point, and that's part of their training.
Yep.
You know, the other part of their training is, it says in verse 10, like in the middle, there's this little. Meanwhile, Herod was, perplexed that all this is happening, and so in verses 7 through 9, it's just saying that the news about Jesus and what was going on and these disciples going out 2 by that's turning the whole country upside down.
Yeah.
But then in 10, it says, on their return, the apostles told him all that they had done, and he took them and withdrew apart to a town called Bethsaida. And so what they're doing here is they're debriefing the mission. And so Jesus was very intentional how he's training these guys. And he's like, all right, how did that go? Oh, you got rocks thrown at you? Oh, it was a really big demon that you cast out? I mean, that must have been amazing. And so he's being very intentional. They had this little retreat. And then, of course, the very next thing that happens is crowds start pressing in, and they're far from any McDonald's or drive-thrus. There's no ChickfilAs, or Five Guys.
There will be soon. Do we have a date on the one in TC?
The sign went up, is what I heard. The sign is up.
Praise God.
Yeah, should we just stop and pray?
So I think it's time we start pushing ChickfilA Traverse City.
Yeah, how?
I think we're the only podcast in the area that would promote you.
Oh, we'll promote you 1,000%.
100%. I mean, there's never been a bigger promotion than
Here's the problem. What is going to be in it for ChickfilA? Because do they really need sponsorships?
You see, I think I make a difference. I think I make a difference.
You and I could make a dent.
Not going to that Chick-fil-A, I promise you will feel it.
We can make a dent in their bottom line, man. Oh, which, okay, this is our podcast. We can talk about whatever we want. Most Northern Michigan people have probably heard of Chick-fil-A.
But haven't committed.
They haven't committed. And there's a few grumblers. Do we have to say his name? I don't know if we give him any more free marketing, but you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. He's like overrated. But he would say that about anything and everything. You could turn water into wine, and he'd be like, but could you turn water into whiskey? I mean, he's that guy, right? But I'm just going to tell you, probably 50% of Northern Michigan people maybe have eaten at Chick-fil-A. And if you're honest, it's the greatest fast food experience you can ever have.
That was the key word that you just said. What was experience?
Yes, it's the experience. It isn't just the product, it's the experience. You will never find a more highly motivated group of young people that are saying, oh, you'd like more Chick-fil-A sauce? My pleasure. Yep. Dude, this is a long rant. But
I'm here for
this is where I'm getting. This is where I'm getting. I would bet, because the closest Chick-fil-A is 2 hours south, that most of our listeners have never had Chick-fil-A breakfast.
Cool.
That's a game changer.
Good one. It is.
When you get that little chicken on the biscuit.
You do the chicken mini?
Chicken mini.
See, I go chicken biscuit, but you got to add bacon and cheddar cheese.
Praise God.
That's a Hope Cole move. She taught me that one. So she lives like less than a mile
Cole,
away from one. That's
soon to be.
That's the commitment.
Bishop.
That's what I'm saying. She lives less than a mile from Chick-fil-A, and she's like, I'll move to Manistee.
Blessed art she among women.
So,
all right. So, anyways,
feeding 5,000 people.
So they feed 5,000, and if you've been around church for a hot second, that was amazing, because one of the things that he does there is and this is recorded in multiple gospels, but they're like, hey, would you send these people away? There's no place to eat. They're getting faint. Mm-hmm. That's you and me if we've missed a meal.
Right.
They're getting faint, and then Jesus says, "You feed them." And they're like, what are you talking about? How in the world can we feed them? And then that, of course, it develops. We have 5 little loaves of bread, which are literally just little biscuits, and 2 fish. And then he prays, blesses them, and he begins to multiply them.
Yep.
Now, I know that it was one of these huge miracles that impacts so many people, because there's way more than 5,000 people.
Right.
They only counted the men. I didn't make the rules. Okay, God's not a sexist, but that's just how they quickly 5,000 head of households.
Yeah.
So if the rest of the households are there could be 10, 15,000 people, and they're all eating food. The disciples are working, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They are working. Even if it was 5,000, even if scholars are wrong. But if there was 15,000, 5,000, they're working. 15,000. Dude, they're dying.
Yeah.
They're just carrying food to people, and this is for you, and this is for you, and crowd control. We can barely get people in Buckley to walk through the crosswalk from the parking lot to T2, let alone, hey, everybody sit down, food's coming.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me is even though it was for the people, Jesus is layering this. In verse 17 of Luke 9, it says, "And they all ate and were satisfied, and what was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces." Now, I don't know if you've heard this one before, but that word basket, it isn't like a big, basket like sits on the Thanksgiving table. Its basket was like a man bag. It was a little basket that you slung over your shoulder if you were going on a journey that had your food, because like we said, they didn't have these little stopovers. And Jesus is, again, with that dependence piece, each one of the disciples has about 3 days worth of food in a little basket for the next part of their journey. At the end of that whole thing, it's like, oh, and I thought about you because, I wonder at one point, Peter, it's always Peter,
right.
Or Thomas, he's bringing the food and he's like, must be nice, feeding all this crowd. But then the leftovers, it's like, oh, he's got you for the next 3 days. And, or whatever, I don't know if some baskets were bigger than others, but this whole training thing, he's on purpose showing these guys how to do this ministry thing.
Yeah, Jesus is being this kind of, these chapters are showing the intentionality of Jesus.
Yes.
I think that's, we're seeing it wasn't just this willy-nilly, like walking around and it's just like healing here, casting out demons here, but there was a serious intentionality because he understood, obviously because he's God, but that the mission didn't stop at the end of his life, but he was getting these guys ready to carry the mission forward.
Right.
And I think that's a huge piece that Christians often look past of, well, why don't we just study the Gospels? What is this Paul? What does this have to do with anything? And it's like, these are the guys that kept it moving forward.
Right.
And it all started with intentionality and Jesus coming and teaching them and teaching a group of rejects.
No doubt.
Like it's not like he found the most intelligent Pharisees and trained them up. And I think honestly what it comes down to is I don't want to say this and hurt people's feelings, but often I think the reason he chose this group of dudes is because he knew it was going to take humility to be a part of this mission.
Yeah.
And you look at this, obviously he's got some tax collectors and some different guys like that, but he's got a bunch of humble dudes that are willing to serve their faces off, that are willing to get after it, that are willing to be teachable. And I think that there's this whole picture of intentionality and humility on the disciples' part and on Jesus' part that's really, really cool. And as I look at my own life and the process of being discipled or discipling others, I think that's a word that is key there. That's something we've been talking about as a church. What does our discipleship process look like and all of that? And I think something we actually wrote down is it's intentional relationship.
Right. Is
what it boils down to. It's not, as something you said, it's not mass-produced. It's not made in a factory, but it's an intentional one-on-one, 1-on-12 relationship where people are serving, people are listening, people are teaching, people are doing, and there's this whole picture that's happening that Jesus is showing us. And I think he's giving us a really clear model of discipleship if you're willing to look for it,
Yeah. And there's something that you said in there. It's humility on their part because they're humble guys. But Jesus is also humble too. Because I didn't think about this till you said that, is Jesus could have written, okay, let me back up. All of Scripture is God-breathed. Yeah. So technically, yes, he inspired all of it. But literally, Jesus could have said, hey guys, I'm going to need to take a little writing sabbatical here, and I'm going to go ahead and write the book of Acts and Romans and Galatians and Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd. I'm just going to write the rest of the New Testament, and you're just going to go ahead and put my name on all of those.
Yeah.
But think about the humility of Jesus. Not only does he entrust this gospel mission, go and make disciples of all nations, to us. Not just those guys, but to us. He also is like, hey, I'm going to spread around the authorship a little bit of this book. That's the God that we serve.
Yeah.
It isn't just him up there going, John, Britton, be humble. He is humble. He's the definition of humble. Yeah. And he's the greatest, most powerful being in the universe.
Yeah.
But he's humble.
Yep. I think that's what's cool too is it was strategic, like him not doing all that, right, and letting there be multiple accounts, because it would have been really easy to discount that this one author, whatever people say about this man that was Jesus that lived, right, whatever the first century historians say. But whenever you take into account how many accounts of Jesus there are from various perspectives, various Jew, Gentile, different religious backgrounds, all of these things, now it's increasing the validity of Christ.
Yes.
And I think that that's a super strategic and intentional, again, with that, the way he's doing everything with the group of guys that he chose. He chose Jews, and he got some Gentiles in there, and he got a group of people that are going to lead this thing moving forward. And I think that it shows, and it's increasing the validity, because it would have been really easy, I think, for culture to be like, yeah, well, he was this Jewish guy, and he's got all Jewish followers.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that we see kind of all of that. Last night with Foundry, we talked about what is the gospel, and I was just kind of studying through it and kind of giving proof and evidence that there was a man named the Christ that lived as first century. Some of the most well-studied first century historians have confirmed that there was a man named the Christ and all this stuff. But I think that we see a ton of this that's just like none of this was an accident.
No,
you know,
and the model isn't just for discipleship. One of the things that's important for us at the Tabernacle with leadership is we tell staff members, we tell volunteer ministry leaders, if you lead anything, you could be in charge of the parking lot. You could be in charge of cafe, something with kids, something with Foundry, leading a fight club. You have to, as a leader, be training up your replacement. You're always training up your replacement. And Jesus is doing that. He's training up his replacements. Now, they're not going to be replacement saviors. They're not going to be replacement son of gods. But he's training up dudes to train up others. Yeah. And so if you think about like these 12, and we've said this before, not all 12 made it. We're going to lose Judas. We're going to add others. And it wasn't just these 12. Just a few chapters, he's going to send out 72. Or who were the 72? Well, there were some other dudes involved there, right? Men and women, I believe, because he's got all kinds of followers. So he had this, this core, these 3 guys, and then he's got 12, and then there's more. So there was a structure, and leadership then, leadership now, is you're always training up others to come after you, to do it better than you. And I'm not saying this just because this is public. Foundry is run better right now than it's ever been. We've had more competent, passionate leadership combined than we've ever had, more volunteer leaders than we've ever had, more organization. It's on 2 campuses, for crying out loud. You guys have these big things so that isn't to discount anyone that's ever been there.
Right.
It's like I was the first youth pastor that this church ever had, but I did everything wrong. Right. And and the second youth pastor, we took a step older, was Tim Burgess, right? And then, I mean, there were some great guys. I mean, Zach was awesome, right? Zach Salazar, the senior pastor. He was outstanding. Brian Williams. Oh, students love Brian. He was great. Brian's first passion wasn't students, and he would be the first one to tell you that. He loves students, and, he was my 2 oldest daughters' youth pastor. They love Brian, right? It has nothing to do with that. But what I'm watching is each one did it better than the one before, and God has blessed that.
Well, I think it's something like what Pastor George talked about in our staff meeting in Manistee this week.
George Butler.
But where he talked about that whenever you lead in such a way that when you leave, it takes more people to continue leading that. And so that's what we're seeing, like Martin Rizzi, who did an incredible job leading the Buckley Firehouse at the time.
He took it to a whole nother level.
And was leading the Manistee one with all volunteers there.
That's
but
right.
Now for us to sustain and continue to grow, it's like, man, we're going to need 2 paid staff members to keep doing this job.
Right.
And so I think that we're seeing that model that George talked about with whenever there's people that show up, they grow a ministry, and whenever they leave, it's multiplication because it's going to take 2 people to do that job. Right. And I think that's the multiplication piece that we're seeing with Jesus is he's setting all this up, and when he leaves, it's going to take a movement to carry the work that he's done forward.
Right.
And I think that that's what we see at Pentecost with all these people coming to Christ, all this stuff.
And you see it in the local church.
Yeah.
You see we've got care pastors that are taking other people with them to learn how to do visitation.
Yep.
We've got facility teams where they're now recruiting other people to come and be a part of the behind-the-scenes work. Our creative arts teams are excellent examples of this. I could listen to Victoria Hughes lead us in worship every week, but she's constantly raising up. She and David both, David at the Manistee campus, they're constantly bringing in other voices, and just expanding those teams. And so back to your point and back to Jesus' model, he's humble enough to deputize these guys, and they're humble enough to receive it and learn. So we get into, the next thing that happens in the chronology is he asks them, who do they say that I am?
Yeah.
I think I've always thought that it was kind of a secret. They knew.
Yeah.
When you're calming storms, casting out demons, and not only does he have this power and authority, he can give it to who he wants, And then so Peter just is the spokesman, and he goes, you're the Christ.
Yeah.
And it says, I think in Matthew, the Son of the living God. Here in Luke, it just says, you're the Christ of God. And what's interesting is whenever there's a confession of who he is, then Jesus tells them explicitly, this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
I'm going to die.
Yeah.
They're going to kill me. And he's not saying, ooh, protect me. He's like running towards it, And that's where the part of the training, he always gets to this point in every gospel. If you want to come after me, you have to, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the piece that kind of kept, and sorry, this is the spoiler alert, when we get to Jesus' arrest and he goes to the cross and he's dead, they're hopeless and helpless and, it was like a shock to their system. Yeah. How many times did he tell you? How many times did he, How many times did you see him raise someone from the dead?
You're
surprised? But now that he's dead, all hope is lost.
Right.
I would be the same way because, like I said, we have built-in forgetters.
Yep.
We're also very much in the moment, but I think right there, nobody really wants to deny themselves, take up their cross.
Yeah, I think too, because you see this kind of movement beginning. There's like this movement mentality that's starting here. And I love there's a kindness in Jesus right here that he gives people a warning, right? This is like the Surgeon General warning. He's like, listen, if you're going to be a part of this, if you want to do this, this isn't just free food and all the power you've ever wanted. Because just a second ago, Herod addressed the fact that he cut John's head off.
That's right.
And if you want to follow me, you're going to have to take up your cross too. Because I'm taking mine up. Yeah, I'm going to die, and 3 days later, but you're going to have to take yours up too. This isn't just about me dying, right? This is about moving this mission forward. It's going to cost you everything.
This is the program.
Yeah, and I think that is I see that picture as one. I love the way there's a old fiery pastor that says it, but he says the one who pays the price sets the terms. And so I think that whenever we look at that, Jesus has the authority to tell people this is going to cost you everything. You're going to have to take up your cross because I'm going to finish this work. But if you're going to move it forward, and we see that moment with Peter in John 21 when he's like, listen,
this is going to hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to kill you just like they killed me.
When you are old, they will lead you where you do not want to go.
Yeah. And so I think that this is a picture, one, of Jesus is making it clear how serious this matters, but also he's being really kind. Because he's not like, so get in. He's like, so if you want out, now's the time.
Now's the time to jump.
And so I think
that's a great point.
Yeah. And I think so many people stop following Jesus because it starts costing them something.
Yeah.
And let's rephrase that. Clarify what I mean by costing something, because it's not, salvation is free. I want to clarify that to people.
Salvation is free, but following Jesus is hard.
Yeah. Following Jesus will cost you because you've given over your will, your way, your natural desires sometimes. And sometimes, there's a scripture that says, if you delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, if you haven't fully delighted in the Lord yet, sometimes there's a rub with my desires and his desires. Yeah. But the more you delight in the Lord, the more your desires become his desires. But in the meantime, we can so easily get off track and then just say, this is too difficult. What does the world think of me? What does she think of me? What do they think of me?
or I just want to do what I want to do, or getting set free of this unhealthy addiction is just too painful. I prefer the addiction.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Or we slip into as well, I think something you hit on last week with the Transfiguration is we get these glimpses of glory and we get really sad when it doesn't look like that all the time.
Yeah, when we have to go into the valley and slug it out and grind, as you would say.
I love the picture. I heard a guy talking one time, and he talks about the mountain range and how there's the ridge line, the timber line. And so how there's a certain point on every mountain where growth stops.
Yeah, where there's no more trees above a certain... Yeah, you can see that out in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's like almost uniform.
Yep. And that's where growth stops. It's too cold, whatever. But then he gives the illustration in the picture. He says, because there's not any growth that happens on the mountaintops. All your growth happens when you're in the valleys.
Oh, I wish I'd have known that last week. I'd have preached that.
And so
wait, say that again. So growth doesn't happen up there.
On the mountaintops, all the growth happens when you're in the valleys. And he uses the mountain illustration because there's a timber line. And I think it's just a really cool picture of what it looks like to follow Jesus. Is there are these beautiful mountaintops experiences, but you can't live there.
Yeah.
There's no vegetation. There's no other life. It's really cool. It looks awesome, but you can't live there. You can navigate, right? I can get from this peak to this peak.
Nice to be up there. But you can see a lot.
but a majority of life with Christ exists in the valley.
Yeah.
And there's a day when all that is over and it's eternity with Christ. And I think that's something we address with the progressive Christianity stuff. If it's not going to get better now, because our definition of better can only be defined and found in eternity with Christ. But there's joy with life in the valley. And I think that there are those pieces and happiness and joy. And we've talked about that on the podcast. But I that's probably just that section of in the Gospels. That's my favorite part of Jesus' teaching because it was something I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Because as a young youth pastor in Colby, Kansas, right, I was like, I've arrived. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, what do you mean this is hard? I thought this was supposed to be easy, right?
Glory to glory.
If I would have known this was going to be hard, I would have done something that paid more, right?
No doubt.
But I had to have that moment. I had to leave. I'm going to run away, and then coming back to it and realizing it's worth it.
Yeah.
The cost is worth it.
Which was, for you, and we've covered this before, it was hard when you hit the ground here.
Yeah.
It's like, because you were hired and then
COVID
pandemic.
And all that stuff.
Yeah. And then it's like alone. I'm alone.
All by myself.
What a great
That's my audition,
jam.
Victoria.
Yeah. Look at you with that tenor. So they go, after Peter confesses that, they go to the Mount of Transfiguration.
Which you preached
the
paint off the walls with that one.
I tried to. Yeah, that was a weird one. But just that is that mountaintop experience. I'm talking about the experience was a weird one. Yeah. Hopefully the sermon wasn't that weird. I was getting a little salty in the last one. But when he comes down off the mountain, those disciples that have been deputized have like this faith crisis, and they can't cast out a demon from a young boy. But then he tells them again in verses 43 and 44, they're marveling at what he just did. He said to his disciples, verse 44, "Let these words sink into your ears. The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men." Let these words sink into your ears. If the disciples were surprised by the persecution of Jesus and of themselves, it's not because they weren't warned. It's like, hey, let this sink in, and they were just too excited about the casting out, and then typical dudes, typical humans, typical sinners. This sounds like the Tabernacle. Right. The very next thing, they get in two arguments. First, they have an argument about which of them is the greatest. Dude, you're in the presence of the Son of God. Hey, next to him, I think I'm kind of a big deal. No way, man.
He loves me the most.
No.
I'm going to write about it in my book.
Yeah, but I'm going to start a speaking tour. Dude, I've been playing 5 churches. Yeah. What are you going to probably get sawn into? Dude, you're going to get stoned to death and not this kind. Yeah. What? So
we have cameras now. Everybody's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hey, this is our podcast. We do whatever we want, right? So, I forgot about the cameras. What's up, cameras? So,
I love it.
Yeah, so they argue about who's the greatest, and then they argue because somebody else is doing ministry in Jesus' name.
Yeah.
And I read a commentary on this. It was saying there was another guy, and I assume he wasn't one of the 12, but he was probably one of the disciples, one of the larger that started doing ministry. And the 12 were like, hey, he's not one of us.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, he's doing ministry and he's not on staff. hey, that guy doesn't have a job description.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's when Jesus is like, don't stop him, for the one who's not against you is for you.
Yeah, and Paul talks about the same thing in some of his letters as well. When people are to some of the churches, he's like, listen, this is good.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or not, it's going to be glorifying to God.
Yeah,
And so-
because I think what you're referring to is the incident with Paul is some people were like, well, Apollos is my favorite preacher. And others are like, I like Paul because he's OG.
Yeah.
You know, he's old school. He used the KJV, you know, and he's like, look, stop it.
Yeah.
Somebody planted, somebody watered, it's God who makes it grow. And it's the same idea. And nothing's changed in 2022.
How many churches people are, well, I go to this church because of this pastor my pastor and I.
Or, well, the Tabernacle and not, dude, we're not the only game in town.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that's a huge piece. Alistair Begg, a guy that we both really like, when he's talking about salvation and things like that, but I think that I see a picture of this here as well, is he says, if you ever refer to your relationship with Jesus as because that's where your first issue is started, right? And so I think whenever you start looking at the other people that are doing ministry, it becomes a lot of I-centered. But what Jesus is pointing at here, and I think what Alistair's talking about is he said, but when we speak of the power of God in our lives, we have to speak of it in the third person because he. And I think that that's something that the disciples slip here, who's the greatest, all that, because he.
Because
and
he.
It's kind of that subtle reminder that our whole existence with Christ has to be in the third person.
Right.
And so I think that that's a cool reminder. And he says it so cool.
Right? Dude, I was just thinking, like you said it and it sounded cool.
Yeah.
But you and I both know when Alistair Begg says it, right? That was my weak Scottish accent. Sorry, Martin Rennie, if you're over in Scotland, you know, at Falkirk FC. There was a Martin Rennie reference right there. He used to go to the Tab. Yep. Yeah. But Begg, when he says it with that Scottish brogue, you know, you're just like, oh, it must really be true.
Yeah.
You know, we speak of him in the third person. We speak of he and his work in our lives. Dude, I want to be like him when I grow up,
I know.
but I might have to move. So, yeah. So then there is rejection. A Samaritan village then rejects them. So what some scholars will do with this chapter, and we're not going to go into it because if it doesn't change the meaning, to me, it's not as important. But you have all these victories like leading up to the transfiguration, and then you have all these failures coming down, and I'm talking about on the part of the disciples.
Yeah.
So there's victory, feeding of the 5,000, sending out the 12, and then they saw the transfiguration, and then on each side of the peak, he foretells his death. But then they're arguing about who's the greatest, and then they're like, hey, they're not in the crew with us. And then the Samaritan village is like, don't come in here, you Jewish rabbi and his followers.
Verse 54.
Read it, bro. What's it say?
When the disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to consume them?
Do you want us?
Right.
These guys are complete
it all went
idiots.
To their head. It went to their head.
Yeah. You know what we need to do is call down fire.
I know he said we have authority for like demons and healing, but I bet he gave us this one
I
too.
bet you
if
we're
Elijah had it, we met him. Right? I guess Elijah's still alive. So
how like self-important do you have to be to think that you're going to call down fire and obliterate a village of men, women, and children? So just as those words came out of my mouth, I realized we're the same.
Oh, yeah.
We're the same.
Oh, yeah.
We have the same murderous spirits. The church today, if you're not on my political team, if you're not on my denominational team, if you're not saved, you're unbelievers.
Yeah.
Washington, Lansing.
Right.
I mean, this is our podcast, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Maybe this is the conviction moment from someone. If you have wanted to call down fire on our governor, you're no different.
Yeah.
And there's listeners that would call down fire on the governor if they could. And I'm not saying we should. I'm saying that's from the pit of hell. That's our sinful nature.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with her or not, and I don't necessarily agree with our governor.
Yeah.
But I'm called to love her and pray for her and submit to her. Oh, that hurts.
Yep.
But call down fire? People haven't changed in 2,000 years, man.
And I love verse 55. But he turned and rebuked them.
Boom.
And I think of that picture of Jesus, like they say that from the back, and he's just like, what?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Like,
Dude, please tell me it was like a road trip.
Right, the dad in the car.
When dad starts, I'm coming back there.
Yeah.
No,
I don't. This car over.
Oh, wouldn't it be cool if it was like, well, it doesn't say what the rebuke was, but I wonder what kind of language he used.
Right.
Let's not be heretical here.
Nah, I don't know.
I don't know
what Tim would say.
It doesn't say what he said.
Yeah.
But we do know that James and John, they got the nickname, the Sons of Thunder. Which, by the way,
that's what I have a younger brother. Sharp and I's nicknames to be.
Oh, you want to be Sons of Thunder?
Or the Bash Brothers.
Or the Bash Brothers? The Bish Brothers. So one of my younger brothers' name is James, and I've always thought, man, if we had a band, that'd be it.
Sons of Thunder.
The Sons of Thunder, right? But I'm not musical. Matt, don't look at me like that. But that could be your band, and I could be let's go on the road, buddy. He's over there playing Candy Crush on his phone.
He's playing Wordle.
He's playing Wordle? What is that? Okay. All right. So,
but
so they do that.
Following Jesus.
But do you see how that cost of following Jesus again?
Yeah.
It's like on both sides. It's like, so there's cost of following, transfiguration, and then we have all these failures, and he comes down to, I'm going to die again, the cost of following. So it's symmetrical.
Yeah.
Kind of the way that whole chapter plays out.
Yep.
And then we get to 10, and now it's multiplied.
Yep.
So, and guys a lot smarter than me have like seen this, that 10 is almost a repeat, but now it's more.
Yeah.
So 10 opens with, it says, after this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go. And he said to them, listen up, Tab, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go your way, behold, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. And again, he gives them, carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road, whatever house you enter. First say, peace be to this house. And he goes on to say, listen, we're going to travel light. But that, if you think about 72 2 by 2 now, he's sending out 35 teams.
Started with 6.
Yes, 6 teams of 2. Now he's sending out 35 teams of 2. The first program worked.
I would have messed that math up.
Well, I had to check it with the calculator.
72.
Yeah, 70 words, the number 2. Yeah, because spelling 2 is a challenge, right?
Harder than
the
70.
T-O-O, T-W-O.
Who knows?
But yeah, so he's still being intentional. But the reason I said listen up is we forget that all the time. A key discipleship piece is our participation in the mission. And
that's good.
I want to be careful not to just go on a rant here because that's not what we're trying to do with this podcast. But so many people, there's a hole in their discipleship because they don't serve anywhere. They're not a laborer. They're a consumer. And they're a consumer for a lot of reasons. Probably the biggest reasons is they think they're unworthy. Well, how unworthy do these guys have to be that are fighting about who's the greatest, who don't have enough faith even though they've been deputized, who want to call fire down from heaven, that are like trying to be exclusive? We're in the club and those guys aren't, so tell them to stop. And Jesus is like, whoever's not against us is for us, stop it, right? These guys are unworthy. And as every degree of separation from Jesus, one of the reasons he sends out the 72, it's an opportunity to tell us and to be recorded again that, look, there's this big, huge harvest field, and if the harvest doesn't get brought in, it's going to rot. And so the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Pray and ask God to send more workers. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the only prayer request Jesus ever gives in Scripture, and it's the only prayer request that we're the answer for, that we can answer that prayer simply by saying, I'm going to serve. And so this is the rant, right? Church our size, we have all the people that we need for Tab Kids, Foundry, Creative Arts, Fight Club, Women's Bible Study, Cafe, Usher Team.
Outreach.
We have all the people we need. Why are we always asking? Because people have decided not to be the answer to that prayer. They think they're unworthy, or they're full of fear, or they got other things to do. And yeah, I should be quieter. I'm going to say something I regret that Matt Hughes over there is going to have to edit.
No, I love the. There's a picture. I love this. It's a quote. It says, "A church full of disciples and non-believers works great. It's Christian consumers that take it off course. A church of disciples and non-believers works great. but it's the Christian consumers that take it off course.
Can you send me that quote?
Yep.
Because I'm completely going to post that.
100%.
Or make it into a cool meme, and then I'll post it, and then I'll give you credit for it.
That's all good.
No, whoever said that, they get it.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have said that. I probably thought it.
You probably did. I wrote it down. This is what John's thinking.
No, that's not what I'm thinking.
But I'm
totally going to steal it.
He sends them out. There's the unrepentant towns. Woe to you. Woe to you for his miracles that we are done in you. So there's the unrepentant towns. Whoever rejects you rejects me, and whoever rejects me rejects the one who sent me. So all that stuff. The return of the 72, and Jesus says to him, I watched Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Look, I have given you the authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy. Nothing at all will harm you. However, don't rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And so I'm going to say this because I have to. That passage, 18 through 20, keying in on verse 19, was weaponized in one of the most unhealthy ways I'd ever experienced early on in my faith.
Oh, really? The whole tread on serpents and scorpions.
It was that whole unhealthy deliverance culture that was, we have the authority to cast this sin out of you, and if you believe this, if you have enough faith, you have this authority, and if you're not trampling on your sin, triumphing over it, there's something, you don't have faith, you're not truly saved. And so I'm reading it, I'm like, this one. But then I think I missed verse 20 for so long. However, don't rejoice that the spirits submit to you. Rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And I think that is a beautiful picture that at 21, I wish somebody would have kept reading. You know, I wish I would have known to keep reading the verse because I think that's such a key piece.
Oh, it is. And the problem with what people do with that verse is, like you said, they miss it. Mm-hmm. They miss the whole thing. So my favorite part of that little passage that you just read is when Jesus says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. In fact, I remember preaching a message years ago, and I think we were going through the book of John maybe, and it was, where it's recorded those same things. Whenever we are advancing the kingdom of God and standing against sin, standing against hatred, oppression, when we're loving God and loving people actively, when our faith has works attached to it, Satan falls like lightning from heaven. Now, scholars, of course, have to pick it apart. Yeah. Did Satan literally, is that when he, no, he's speaking metaphorically here. He's saying his defeat is already done because you've received this gospel and now you're living it out.
Yeah.
And that happens whether it's an adult, man, woman, child, student, living it out at school, Satan falls like lightning. But then he goes on to, say this whole thing with it, treading on serpents and scorpions and the power of the enemy. So in my handy-dandy man's Bible that I need its own carry case for, there's a note. And this is where we rely on men and women who have studied and are going to tell us what that means. It says, Jesus' great power over demons has been delegated to his disciples. Serpents and scorpions are physical dangers that the disciples will face in their preaching, but they're also symbols of demonic opposition. Is there demonic opposition? Yes. Satan and his minions don't want you and Hope to be married.
Right.
And they don't want your marriage to succeed. And they don't want you to be faithful to one another. And they don't want you to find any real joy. They want you to resent each other and hopefully have a few kids. And then, Satan is against you all the time. But when you persevere, loving God and loving people and loving your wife and she loving her husband, and I'm just using this as an example because I'm so fired up about you guys, and you outkicked your coverage on
Big
getting her
time.
to say I do.
Big time.
But Satan's going to fall like lightning, and you'll be treading on the literal and metaphorical dangers that Satan has for you. So we don't bring snakes and scorpions into church and you walk on them as a test to see. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened in your church, but I know there's churches in Kentucky that's how they interpret that. Well, okay, I got to prove that the Spirit of God is in me by doing something stupid.
Yep.
We're going to have rattlesnakes after the offertory. It's like, oh gosh.
I'll scratch that idea.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, no, it just, and I think too, but I think that verse 20 is the key piece for me, is so many people want the authority that comes from Jesus, but they don't want to submit to him.
That's right.
I think that's what we see along the way, is so many people want all the blessings that come from it, but they don't want the submission. They don't want the hard parts. And that was kind of some of my experience, and it was kind of this prosperity kind of mixed with it was weird, dude. We were drinking all the Kool-Aids.
Oh, it was
all
weird,
at once.
that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so.
Well, you already pointed out the whole point of that passage, verse 20. Nevertheless, like he's saying, there's going to be great mountaintop experiences. There's going to be near-death experiences. You're going to see me protect you from all sorts of things. And when he says nothing shall hurt you in verse 19, he's saying ultimately, like, nothing's going to hurt your relationship with God.
Yep.
You're still going to feel physical pain.
Yeah.
You're still
There's still suffering on this side.
Yeah, you might get bit by the snake and the scorpion. But for eternity, nothing could touch you.
Yep.
You're my child. And then what you mentioned, 20, don't rejoice in this, that all these supernatural things, that these spirits are subject to you. What you need to focus on is that your names are written in heaven.
Yeah.
That's what you're focused on. That kind of puts it in perspective. That keeps us humble. There's this cool part where Jesus rejoices in his Father's will. And to be honest, when I've read that before, I'm like, okay, he rejoiced, great. Jesus is a worshiper of God. He is God, and he's a worshiper of God. And then in verse 23, this jumped out to me. He turns to his disciples and said privately, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see, for I tell you that many prophets and kings desired to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it." He's talking about all the men and women of faith from the Old Testament that have gone before. Yeah. And he's like, do you realize how blessed you are?
Yeah.
You know, you are so, and now 2,000 years later, they would probably say how blessed we are to have this.
Read it. Yeah.
You know, and I'm sitting here going, oh man, how cool it have been to be a disciple. And the disciples are like, oh, how cool it have been to be Moses and the children of Israel. It's like, no, you don't want to be in that wilderness of death.
Right.
You know, or all the disciples who were all either killed. Well, yeah, they were all martyred.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. Maybe John, we think, died of old age, but only after being dipped in boiling oil, right? How do you live that? Right?
Yeah.
So then there's a parable of the Good Samaritan, which
I think
you
you've talked about, I think whether you addressed it in a sermon or was it the podcast where you talked about the Good Samaritan?
Probably both.
Yeah.
Probably both.
It was not too long ago, but it was.
I think it was a sermon.
Yeah. It was so well done. And I think that I wish I could remember where it was so I could point people back to it, but you kind of broke down all the parties involved and you kind of, and all that stuff. And it was just this really beautiful picture of what this story is actually about.
What was new, because it wasn't, it was someone that I'd been reading that pointed out that we are not that much different than the priest and the Levite that walk by.
Yep.
Because I've always been, those religious types, I would have stopped. Would you?
Yeah.
Would you? Because those guys were being safe. Yep. Those guys were being careful. Those guys weren't supposed to. Mm-hmm. And it was the Samaritan that kind of broke through those boundaries to be Jesus with skin on.
Yep. Yeah. And then he continues through that, and then we get to that kind of the final story in chapter 10, and that's the story of Martha and Mary. And it's this beautiful kind of
that's
picture
a great
of
one.
These two sisters that are
Bro, you might just have to read it for us.
Okay, I will.
Wait, are you reading out of the CSB?
Yes.
Yeah, they're starting a little CSB revolution in Foundry.
That's
okay.
No.
We'll see how this translation goes.
Seventh grade reading level.
I love it, bro.
And you saw how I wrote 72. I need all the help I can get, all right?
I'm not a Bible translation snob. So yeah, come on, read it for us, man, because it's a good place to kind of.
While they were traveling, he entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who also sat at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came up and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand." And the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her." Love it.
Love it. The whole Mary Martha syndrome.
I don't know if you remember it was probably like 3 years ago. It was like my first year as a firebrand at Forge, and we had that lady came and she did the storytelling training.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she taught us how to tell that story. It's like that was like a cool moment in ministry, her telling that story, and it was really like just the perspective that she brought in and stuff. I think Diane was her name.
Yeah, her name was, yeah, she was great. I was in a different training with her, and she didn't use that story.
Right. She used the one of Jesus sleeping in the boat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was in that one too. I was like, man, who's that guy texting over there? It's like, oh, it's John.
Yeah, exactly. I was 100% texting.
I'm kidding. But yeah, I think that's just this. I'm both.
Oh, we're all both at different times.
Most of the
you
time.
mean Mary or Martha? We can get distracted by tasks.
Yep.
Right? Kind of like right now, Lord Matthew Corey Hughes is very distracted by something over in the corner on the computer. I mean, he could be sitting in awe.
He's never coming back to help.
Of Britton
we gotta
Bishop.
get Matt his own microphone so he can pitch in his own.
Well,
thoughts.
This is the first vodcast, so Matt had to. He's got to do it. There's a rumor that he's got an intern that's going to be taking over here pretty soon. But I'll tell you, for one thing, looking at that screen, we need a Martha in here to decorate this place. This place is like...
Hey, we're doing the best we can with the tools that we have.
Well, look, so this table was handcrafted by Ben Brown, right? This technology, new micro... We haven't even talked about this yet. We had these cranes that were awesome and industrial. There was like these cranes that everyone had to navigate. And now, Lord Matthew Corey Hughes, ask Victoria why he's Lord. Not the Lord, a Lord. Or Laird, to be...
Laird?
Yeah.
Laird.
We've got these guys going, and we've got these sound bufferings, but they need something on them.
Yeah, we ordered some black curtains.
I mean, your face is easy on the eyes. I'm not going to lie, but a little color wouldn't be bad.
Curtains, maybe a floating shelf or two.
We need a floating shelf.
We do have Lodi.
You've got a Lodi. We still have the Rhino.
That will never leave the table.
No, the Rhino's got it. In fact, I thought about bringing a pedestal so we can put them right there.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Just right in the middle. I got a little pedestal made out of stone. But
nice.
So the Mary and Martha thing. Well, Martha is distracted by much serving. That's Matthew Hughes. He's full-time, and he makes us all look bad.
Yeah.
The chairman of the board today said about Matt, I see his truck here all the time more than anybody else.
Because he rides home with Victoria.
Oh, okay. See... I think he was trying to prop up Matt just a little bit, but he was. I think that was the more I think it was a little jab at me.
Yeah,
it's like, come on, man, I got an office at home.
Yeah,
I don't want to be here all the time with all these whatever. Because then I have to sign some papers from Christine Snow. I don't know.
I think
she's the administrator. She's your mom away from mom.
She is. She is. I think the picture though with Martha is she's not wrong. She gets such a bad rap for trying to serve Jesus.
Matthew, did you get that? You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
We gotta get you a mic, bro, so you can defend yourself in here.
Put your shirt down.
So
I'm just kidding.
But I think that's the key. Like she's doing her best to create a beautiful home for Jesus to come in and feel welcome. She
probably
knows
a great dinner.
How they've been traveling. They're going through it, and so she's trying to do all this stuff, and it would get frustrating, right?
She's doing the dishes.
Yeah.
She's packing a lunch.
This was hope when you told me that Foster and Laura were coming to my house, and I'm sitting over there, and except I was sitting at the feet of Sports Center, and she's like,
and she was cleaning your apartment.
I helped.
Britton Bishop.
I helped.
Britton Bishop.
I got lunch ready.
You got lunch ready,
yeah, and I took some stuff to Goodwill.
Who was more Martha that day?
100% Hope Cole.
So she was not wrong.
Right.
She was not wrong. And yeah, so continue that thought that you were sharing.
Yeah, and then I think, but then Mary, we see this beautiful picture of intimacy with Jesus. And in the midst of, I think this is a picture of faith and doing, and it's kind of that balance that we talk about. But Mary, in this moment, Jesus is there, and he's pointing to the importance of intimacy. He's pointing to the importance of keeping the main thing. It's not just about serving me. It's about worshiping me. It's about spending time with me. It's intimacy. It's time with. And I think that is this beautiful picture that we see here. And so there are moments where we need everybody to slow down and spend some time with Jesus. But I think there are also moments that when you do become that Martha and it comes to time when you can serve, the more you've been intimate with Jesus, the more that's the overflow of your heart. That's something Foster talks about here. And I think that the more you can serve and do with a heart of intimacy, the better and more blessed those things will be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's and it doesn't even tell us what he was teaching in her home. And we assume there's other disciples there. Mm-hmm. But, I'm thinking about women in that culture. Here's an opportunity for her to sit at the feet of a rabbi because it's not in public.
Yeah.
where she couldn't get away with that. She's breaking cultural boundaries, some of these boundaries that were, and here's a chance to sit and just listen. There was a mentor in my life that, and I think you've heard me share this before, but Scott Bills was my youth pastor. And if you know Scott, he's a pastor. He's retired now, and he's been at a lot of different churches in Traverse City, but most notably Faith Reformed Church, where he was an administrator, executive, the whole
crazy
deal.
Small world that he was your youth pastor down in.
Yeah, down in Plymouth,
crazy.
Indiana. And then he was like a pastor in Yellowstone or somewhere in Wyoming or Montana, somewhere out there, and then came back to Michigan. Well, Scott and his first wife, Beth, who was taken way too early in a battle with MS, right? And Scott would tell you, Beth knew the Bible better than me and Scott both. I mean, she was a soldier for the Lord, a soldier for Christ, right? And had 4 or 5 kids, and then when they were all kind of grown, started this battle with MS. Well, my wife and I had the privilege of staying in their home years ago, probably 20-some years ago, and we were passing through. This is when they lived downstate, and we were just gleaning. We were sitting at their feet just a little bit, and just because we were coming into ministry, or we'd been in ministry for a while and parenting and the whole deal, whatever. I'm taking too long to tell the story. But Beth said this. This is, and the reason I shared all of that, because she knew where her end was coming. Life of ministry, life of motherhood, and a wife with Jesus, it's going to be cut short too soon. And she said, if I could give you one bit of advice, it's one thing that we tried to live by. And I'm like, yeah, what? And she said, we decided early on in our house, the dishes can wait. The dishes can wait. Now, that didn't mean,
I wrote that down, so that's Bible to me now.
That's Bible.
Yeah.
What she meant was there's some things that are more important than the house being perfect. Like making memories with your kids, making time to pray with your kids at night, read the Bible story, to laugh, to welcome the person from the. I mean, you don't need to sit there and ignore the guests or leave your husband with them while I do the dishes and kind of have this false, we got to keep everything perfect.
Right.
The dishes can wait meant this. There's something better. Choose the better portion.
Yeah.
You can do the dishes the next morning, or you can do the dishes when the guests leave. Or you can do the dishes in 3 days if you're Britton Bishop. I don't know if that's true.
Here's the thing. I'm a strategic guy. Okay, I think strategically. And so when Hope first came to my apartment and we had dinner for the first time, she's like, so you only have 2 plates? I was like, yeah. And she's like, 2 bowls? Yep. 2 cups? Yeah. 2 forks? Yep. 2 spoons? Yeah. And here's my thing. The dishes can never fill up the sink if they literally can't fill up the sink. I have more now because she bought them. But when she first, I'm not kidding.
I thought you were going to say something romantic, like just you and...
No, I only had 2 sets of everything.
You only 2 sets.
It's only me. Why do I need more than that?
Why do I need more than that?
I got 2 days worth. I show up and clean them and they're back in.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So you get it. Yeah.
And I think, too, that was whenever I only knew how to cook 3 things, and it was 3 different versions of chicken and rice. So
3 different. Okay.
I'm dialing it in now.
You're dialing it in. She's going to line you up in a second.
But
so, we're going to go into 12.
The end of 10?
Yeah. Or no, that's the end of 11. Or no, that's the end of 10. Sorry.
You're preaching in 11, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk this next week about chapter 11, and maybe we'll capture some of those. Actually, I'm going to cover most of the end of it. So, I mean, there's great stuff. Tab Family, the Son of God series, the reading plan, I'm telling you, is the key. Yeah. And so we've said it. It isn't too late to catch up. If you didn't start at the beginning, because I know there's these Enneagram number 1s that are like, well, I didn't start at the beginning, so I'm not going to do it. Don't be a Martha. Yeah. All right, just jump in wherever we're at. It just gives it context. It makes it richer.
Are you doing anything on the Lord's Prayer?
Not in the sermon.
So
no.
I would plug that we have an episode on the podcast about prayer and intimacy where we break down the Lord's Prayer, and go back to that episode, and
we'll link it maybe in the note thing.
We spent a ton of time on that. I'll put the episode number. So, but yeah, man, first vodcast, John. How you feeling?
I'm feeling like next time I should probably take a shower.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe dress up a little.
Shirt. Hey, you guys always told me for Christmas, whatever your thing is, bring it up 1 level. So, and then you looked at me and you said,
"That's it."
Buttons.
Buttons.
I got buttons. I just didn't button them.
Oh, yeah. Well, neither did I. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I had fun. I love the book of Luke, I think, as we're journeying through this and kind of setting up for this incredible moment at Easter where we see this kind of story come to fruition.
Oh, that's right. Easter's coming.
Yeah.
Easter's always coming. That's a
Yeah.
Super Bowl. I mean, there's a literal Super Bowl.
Coming.
Are you making a Super Bowl prediction?
I'll make one on the podcast.
Okay, you go for it. Dude, I don't know enough about football. I mean, I can tell you who I want to win.
I'll say it. I don't want to offend anybody, including yourself. I'm going to say Rams 27-21.
Okay.
Rams 27-21.
27-21.
Yep.
So I'm going to say Bengals
Okay.
by 3.
Bengals by 3.
Bengals by 3.
Field goal, young gun
Yeah,
again.
Bengals by 2 or 3. I don't know how to do odds, but
And for all your Super Bowl party needs.
Trace cakes.
Trace cakes.
Trace cakes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know if she's actually doing anything for the Super Bowl. But
Dude, that would be amazing. Trace cakes at a Super Bowl?
yeah.
That
Trace
would
cakes,
be
little cookies, little football-shaped
now,
cookie.
now before
Is
we
there a
finish
discount code?
there is I don't know if there's a discount code, but we're going to make a discount code.
1% off.
Well, we'll let Tom decide, Tracy's husband, Tom, how much it's going to be. But if you contact Trace Cakes, you contact them on Facebook,
Yep.
right? And you make a Super Bowl order, either discount code JV or Bish. If you say Bish, JV, or Tab Podcast, see if that'll get you a discount.
We can't make any
I
guarantees.
can't promise.
No.
But there might be.
Yeah,
This
maybe.
we've been trying so hard to get the sponsorship.
Absolutely.
We got one little, treat.
Yeah.
With the
Which they would have been cool on the vodcast. I could have eaten a
we could
muffin
have
for
Trace
everybody
cake.
to see.
Yeah, we could have had it right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that a centerpiece.
Mm-hmm.
We also need someone to sponsor the decor.
The decor,
Is that what
yeah.
you call it? The decor?
Yeah. It'd be crazy if somebody
Yeah.
was like engaged to somebody that had a degree in interior design.
Oh,
or
if
something.
someone was engaged.
Yeah.
Is that a test to see if she actually listens to your
Exactly.
podcast? Yeah.
That's it.
So my oldest child, I said to her, and I love Isabel Grace, right? She is the mother of my grandchild, the wife to Jacob Crawford, Jacob with a K, greatest son-in-law man could ever have. I asked her, I was like, oh, did you hear that on the podcast? She goes, Dad, I haven't listened to any of the podcasts. No, she goes, no, I listened to one. It was really good. And she was so apologetic. And I'm like, Belle, you've listened to my podcast
exactly.
for 24 years,
Yep.
babe. I'm not going to shame you for this.
My favorite thing, Hope had a Gabby moment this last weekend. They were
My Gabby?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They went and did something. Everybody's like, oh, you're Britton's fiance. And then the next person, oh, you're Britton's fiance. And then time after time after time, they sat down in the movie and Hope said, Gabby leaned over and goes, it's okay. Someday they'll know your name.
That's my kid. Because she's faced that. Oh, you're John's daughter.
Yeah.
you're Pastor. Oh, are you
It was like
miniature
Gabby's
Pastor
little
John?
like, hey,
yeah.
we know
One
what
day
you're
they-
going through.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so cute.
Yeah. Skylar Bibles.
Skylar Bibles.
Yeah. We'd love for them to sponsor the podcast.
But wait a second. On the Super Bowl, this is what I'm saying, Bengals by
Okay.
3. They just keep finding a way.
Yep.
They keep finding a way.
Joey Burrow.
Joe Burrow from Athens, Ohio. I get it. Now, the one thing is that we will say, and I'm not just trying to be the peace guy,
I'm with you.
whoever wins, I'm happy.
Yep.
Because the Bengals got there again, and they should be happy with that because they were picked to only win 3 games this year.
Right.
So this became a sports podcast.
That's all good.
If the Bengals win, I'm going to be happy. And I'm not a bandwagon guy. It's the first city in the United States I lived in was Cincinnati, Ohio. I moved there when I was like 5 or 6 years old. Lived there back when the Bengals, it spelled Bengals on there. I mean, that's how nasty it was, right? I remember getting a Bengals jersey and a helmet for Christmas one year,
Let's go.
right? But beyond that, that's my only connection. Okay, it's kind of those. But if the Rams win, do you know how many Detroit fans are so suddenly Rams fans? It's pathetic.
My favorite meme that I've seen, it was a picture of Matthew Stafford and Eminem, and it said the closest Detroit will ever get to a Super Bowl.
Because Matt Stafford, QB, had to move from Detroit to get to the Super Bowl.
But hey, he made
Eminem's a halftime show?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
It's another one that
So
said
it's a win-win.
If the Lions only had a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, they could make it. And it was a picture of Matt
goodness. They got to be kicking themselves. The hapless Lions.
Stafford. It is what it is.
I mean, the Bengals are in their second Super Bowl, and the Lions have never been there. That's Detroit. I hope you're listening. But
We love you.
Trace Cakes, get your Bish, JV, or Tab podcast discount.
Potential discount. Potential.
We can't guarantee that.
Yep.
Schuyler Bibles.
We
recommend them.
And ChickfilA, Traverse City.
And we're plugging businesses that aren't even, like,
Hey,
you and I had
here's
to
the
pay
thing.
for our Schuyler Bible.
No free shout-outs. But free shout-outs.
No free shout. We're angling.
Yeah.
We're angling, but no free shout-outs.
No
yeah.
free shout-outs.
So if you come to us this weekend and are like, hey, can you push my biz? Oh, no. That's going to cost you.
No free shout-outs.
Yeah, we only give free shout-outs to the no free shout-outs
Exactly.
that were.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Well, John, thanks, man. It was fun. Podcast family, peace out. This is John and Britton signing off.